Good afternoon, everyone. Afternoon, Jim. How are you?
Absolutely fantastic. This is going to be a great show. This is how to build a buy-to-let portfolio. What everybody wants to know, the magic, the secret sauce, as we talk about.
How to build a property buy-to-let portfolio. Lot to cover. We will look initially at what is a portfolio. Do you know, for those of you that maybe aren't too sure about what an actual property portfolio is, we'll cover that. And then we've got our 10 essential kind of tips to go through, and obviously a lot of other knowledge and stats and things that we're going to.
Do you want to quickly go over the brief headings of these 10 things that we're going to talk about?
Yes, so firstly, obviously, making sure you are financially ready and that you know, obviously, what your financial position is. Thinking about what your goals are for your property portfolio. What is the purpose of that? Where do you want it? Where do you want to be? Where do you want it to get you to go? Do your research on good areas for buy-to-lets and things. Speak to your agent. Make sure they know what they're talking about. They've got feet on the ground in these areas and know what are good investment properties. Start small. If you're just starting out, start small and then expand your portfolio. And make sure you're doing that properly, and always err on the side of caution. Don't just rush into purchases and deals just because you're in that kind of mind frame and you get the
The next one we've got to think about is think about your tenants, diversifying, choosing the hands-off investment if you should be hands-on, hands-off. Also, long-term plan and exit strategy, which is quite important. Consider buying off-plan. Consider buying off-plan property. Not really sure about that. And then the final one is, what's the final one we're going to talk about?
We're going to talk about buy-to-let mortgages, whether it's right. I mean, do you avoid them if you could pay cash, or do you use financing? That's where.
Well, I'll tell you the secrets at the end. Hold on to the end. Hold tight, folks. This is a master class. I've got to say it. I need a double door to get my head out of here. But you can't decry the very fact that I've been doing this for 30 years, Richard. I keep saying it. I'm a multi-millionaire in this, and it's not just in its wealth creation. It's not just in property ownership, because a lot of people go, "I've got millions," and it's like, well, your net worth's no millions because all of it's owned by the bank. It's what I'm talking about is wealth is assets minus liabilities. That is your wealth. Bottom line balance sheet. Are you negative? If that's the case, well, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. Is it, there's reasons it can be negative, and I'll tell you all about that as we're going through. But, what is your net position, assets minus liabilities? That's when you can start preaching and talking to people about this. That's where you have to get to. Other than that, you're just a poor person teaching somebody to try and be rich. And if a poor person could teach a person to be rich, then I'll eat my heart, because I'll tell you what, that's why they're poor, for that very reason. That's why they've not got any wealth, not got any money. So a broke person can't teach another person to be rich because they'd be rich already. Okay, let's kick off then. What we're going to talk about.
Well, I'll just quickly, obviously, what is a portfolio? I mean, a lot of people, if you're just starting out and things, just so you're clear on what a portfolio is and knowing how to build a portfolio of your own, you do need to understand exactly what it is. And I mean, in simple terms, a property portfolio is a selection of investment properties owned by maybe an individual, or whether you do it through your limited company or whatever. And building a property portfolio in the UK means to purchase several buy-to-let investment opportunities and generate a significant return on investment and generate that all-important cash flow, and in time, obviously, capital appreciation and things as well. But purchasing different properties, different areas, do you know what I mean? And all that combined is how you build a successful portfolio. Buy-to-let. Okay. Number one, I think, is a really important step to start with, and it's making sure you're financially ready in terms of what kind of financial position you're in, how much spending power do you have you spoke to the right people. So that's what we're going to cover first. And if you want to know, obviously people want to know how maybe to finance a portfolio and things as well. So our first top tip is, if you want to know how to build your portfolio, your buy-to-let portfolio, is to make sure you're financially ready. And starting a property portfolio can sometimes be expensive, and there is a lot of ongoing cost involved, so you need to be aware of that.
Yeah, and currently, let's look at the average prices then, and the whole of the Britain, whole of UK.
Yeah.
Let's break this down. So the average UK price for a property is around about 295,000 right now.
Yeah.
Now, I'll tell you, if you're going to buy a buy-to-let property at 295,000, then you've got to think again, because that is not the buy-to-let I'm talking about. The buy-to-let I'm talking about is how to generate cash flow every single month to set you free. It's not the long-term wealth will happen as a natural result of you doing this correct in the beginning. And if you get that right in the beginning, it's like building a house. If you get that right in the beginning and you get the foundations right, everything else will fall into place and will be icing on the cake later on. So the object of the exercise in buy-to-let, I would imagine that most people watching this or listening to this right now will be to set themselves free, financially free. And financial freedom is different to other people. And financial freedom to me was having my time back. Now I've got on my wee bio on Facebook, I'm a time lord.
Yeah.
You'll have noticed I changed that because I'm effectively a time lord. I have bought back my time, and my time is my own to use, whereas all my time was taken up by someone else before, and everything else I was doing, it was literally 168 hours a week. If I could work out you can work out how to multiply your efforts by getting other people involved. So your 168 hours a week becomes a lot more, becomes thousands of hours if you get more people working with you. That's a key. That's a key how to build from there. So average price 295,000 in the UK. The average price in England on its own is 315,000. In Scotland is 187,000. In Wales it's 222,000. In Fife 173,000. And yet the medium, in other words, the average salary in the UK, right across the UK, is £33,000.
Yeah.
Now, if you're sitting on an average salary of £33,000, and everybody is, or below or above that, whatever it is, and if it's a £33,000 average in England, there's a £33,000 average in Scotland, there's a £33,000 average in Fife, which it is, because that's what they're saying, and I've looked at it, then where do you think you should be buying the property? And probably the lowest value area possible. There's a trade-off. There's a trade-off to a degree, because then the return is obviously going to be more on your investment and your capital you're putting in. And we will talk about that all the way through there. Property has been growing at its fastest rate since 2004. With buyer demand, it was quite high last year, the year before. Property in the last 3 years overall has gone up about 30%. Now, if you started your journey in buy-to-let 3 years ago, think about the capital appreciation you've just achieved. We're doing that.
Yeah.
See what I mean? But don't rely on that. The point was to generate cash every single month so it can allow you to reinvest. By the way, you can ask questions if you want. We will keep them till the end, and we will answer them at the end. For anybody that's wanting to ask questions or make comments or anything like that, we will cover all this at the very end, okay? Now, while you can build a buy-to-let portfolio for cheaper, it's important to realise that you could be spending significant sums and funds to start your property portfolio in the very beginning. You could end up buying an actual rundown wreck in the very beginning, but it could cost you a fortune to actually refurbish it and actually regenerate it. So, for example, you could buy a buy-to-let possibly for about £40,000. Will you get a mortgage? That's another question, because mortgages are usually £50,000 minimum and above. That was my biggest challenge when I first started out. When I first started out, I was buying property at 15 and 10,000. But the minimum buy-to-let property was actually mortgage was £30,000 for the valuation. So you can see there how I wasn't able to do that. Hence the reason why I had to go to banks and do term loans, with the banks. In other words, 20-year facilities, maybe at base plus whatever it is, percentage margin over. But at that time, the numbers still made sense to me. And I still follow that route right now. I'll still deal with the banks. It's very rare a buy-to-let lender will ever touch me because of the size of the portfolios. You don't get that sort of thing. But this also comes into then we talk about, finances and tax and everything like that. So you need to also factor in the ongoing costs of the buy-to-let property purchases as well. I mean, these potentially are things like, ADS, the additional dwelling supplement. Stamp duty. Well, stamp duty is not that encumbrant, especially if you're buying, because you've got 120, 140,000 exemption in Scotland. In England, I think it's 250,000, if not 500,000. I can't remember.
I think it's that high, yeah.
Yeah. So you're never going to buy a property which is going to incur stamp duty, but you're certainly going to get nailed for the ADS, the additional dwelling supplement for second homes. Because we're dragged into that, even though it's investment properties to rent to someone, we're still dragged into the second homes tax. So we have to pay it. In Scotland, it's 6%. In England, it's 3% now. But there's organisations right now saying that they should be putting that up in England as well to deter people from buying investment properties for rent. Okay, if you've got a housing crisis on right now and you've not got enough tenants, you've not got enough properties to fill for tenants, and people are homeless and they need properties definitely, who do you think is going to save you in the short term? It's not going to be the government.
No,
it's going to be private landlords.
Yeah.
So putting ADS up is a stupid idea. Absolutely stupid. And you think, we actually vote these people into power.
I know.
And I genuinely think career politicians have no commercial reality. In other words, how the world works. They don't understand. They've been taught on paper, and they've been taught in a university environment. When they come out into the real world, they have no idea how the real world works. And I have to say, a lot of them are civil servants previously. And again, civil servants don't really have that handle on how the commercial world works, how business works, how private enterprise works, how the economy works, for example, as well. This is why it's important to understand this in a buy-to-let property.
I think as well, we spoke about it before. I mean, these people are putting these legislations and things in place, which obviously govern how we operate in the private sector, but they don't think about the actual how it works when it's rolled out, how it actually works and how it affects us on the ground, trying to obviously find tenants' homes and things. It just makes it so difficult.
So stuff you've got to think about as well, Richard, is your income tax, whether you're going to do a limited company or whether you're going to do it in your own name, and what the income tax implications were of these. Now, we can't go into real detail here because we've got 10 ones to get through. We've probably got 60 minutes. We've got 6 minutes for each one, effectively, and we're 12 minutes in. I need to zip it and throw the key away. However, I will speed up a bit, and we'll get questions at the end, and that's where it's important to ask the questions about these ones if you do want us to go into a wee bit more
as
detail.
we go ask the questions and we come back to them.
There's things like letting agent fees as well. There's maintenance costs in England. There's ground rent. There's capital gains tax potentially. I have seen someone do valuations on their properties to actually boost their balance sheet, but also include the deferred capital gains to bring it down, the valuation, because they realise that when they sell it, the true valuation is really what you've got left after the capital gains taken off. So they've actually been quite prudent in terms of their valuations of their properties. They've maybe valued it at 100,000, but they've then said, well, I bought it for 50. There's a 50 grand gain there. It's going to be 28%. I'm going to take 28% of 50,000 off, and that's going to be the valuation of the property, really, in essence. Now, you obviously don't do that for the bank purposes, for getting remortgages and financing, but that's how you do it in real world. That's how you should look at it. You've got mortgage payments as well, interest only or capital repayment. Which one do you want to do? That's a really important point. I mean, capital repayment could leave you with no money to actually pay a tax bill at the end of the year. That's quite a frightening one. You can get caught out on that. A lot of people can get caught out on that on capital repayment mortgages. So I generally stick to interest only mortgages, and then I put money aside of what I've built up, and then I can pay down capital if I want. It's better in my pocket than out, rather than actually paying it to the bank. Because if you need a rainy day fund, and you've maybe got one aside, or you may be flying by the seat of your pants, like most buy-to-let landlords do, if you need a rainy day fund, it has to come out of your pocket if you're paying down your mortgage all the time. Because you won't get it back for the bank unless you remortgage, which costs more money and more fees to do that. Landlord's insurance is really important as well. We've just got to claim the now. We're getting it paid for us. We're getting new kitchen, new bathroom, redecorated, carpeted, all because somebody broke into the property and trashed it. Then that's all getting paid plus loss of rent. Now, any other landlord insurance, I bet, would have had an issue with that. But I made sure I was with the right lender, and I actually saved about a third on my existing landlord insurance by changing to these ones we've got now.
And they've been really good. I was on to them this morning.
So we can refer you to a proper landlord insurance
Yep.
company, which we use and we know have actually honoured the agreement, and also in certain situations. The previous one didn't honour certain situations, which I was really concerned about, hence the reason why I moved to another landlord insurance company, which is actually one of the biggest insurers in Britain. So, don't fall for your direct line and all the rest of it, because direct line generally, it doesn't cover you for as much cover as the traditional, the mainstream landlord providers do, the specialists do, and they also don't cover you for things like certain types of tenants. Like they might not cover you for student lets, they might not cover you for housing benefits
and things.
These are all things you don't really know about it.
And a lot of the big players like Direct Line and Swinton and things, over the years, I've seen loopholes that landlords have come up against in their insurance claims if they need to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good to have it's imperative that you have the right insurance in place.
Yeah, I caught a quick glimpse of somebody saying, I'm not really sure what your name is. Would be good to know who the insurers are. Yes, we can introduce you to Hamilton Fraser Insurance. Now,
Yeah.
Hamilton Fraser Insurance is one of the biggest providers. It is actually one of the, most people will know Paul Champolin. Paul Champolin, who was of Landlord Action, who does all the Channel 5 programs. So Paul, I know Paul very well. Paul's an ambassador for them. Paul actually encouraged me to come over to them. It took me a lot of thinking and a lot of time to come over, but we get a preferential rate for that reason because it's bulk. So if you want an introduction, you need to contact us to do that, because you will get a more enhanced rate as you will through the introduction, as opposed to actually going straight to them yourself. Okay, so the next thing to think about, probably, if you've got that all under sort of your thought process about all the costs involved, and make sure you're financially ready. Now, you don't need to make sure I'm not ready. I've not got this in place, that in place, this in place. Don't get paralysis analysis. Next one to think about, I think, is about your goals. I mean, it is the second step in building a buy-to-let portfolio, is to think about your goals. Now, for me personally, it was my first step. Because why would you do anything then?
Because that was the catalyst to make you think, this is what I want. I need to do something to achieve that. And then obviously,
I need to do something to set myself free. What's it going to be? Okay, after, wandering in the desert, in my mind for a while, if that makes sense to anybody, and then thinking, okay, property investment. After trying a few things, property investment was the one for me. Because I saw the vision and I understood where it could go, and I did the numbers, and I thought, this is just a matter of time. This is so straightforward and easy. It's so straightforward and easy. It's just a matter of time. My spreadsheet tells me this. Bullshit. Bullshit. If anybody thinks like that out there right now, just starting out in their journey, naivety.
Yeah.
Delusional.
I think you've said it before, Jim. It's not for the faint-hearted, and there is a lot of work that goes into it, especially at the early stages, to get things up and running.
That's why it's important to actually get in touch with people like yourself and like myself, and actually be in our groups, in our private mentor groups and stuff like that, because then you'll understand how it's going. This doesn't cost you anything, by the way. We're no selling you anything here. But that's why we'll have the private mentor groups, because it's a rising tide lifts all ships. It can be pretty lonely sitting on the beaches of the world by yourself. You maybe got all the money in the world, but you've got nobody else to enjoy it with. That's why it's better to take people with you on your journey, and let them build the portfolio, let them become successful, so you can enjoy it together.
Yeah.
So your property investment goals, you need to outline exactly what you want. It's important to think about your goals, as they have a direct impact on your investment strategy that you'll choose when you're deciding how to build your portfolio. What's the things to ask yourself, Richard? What should people ask themselves?
Well, for instance, let's say maybe you were planning for your retirement, and you're willing to keep investment funds locked away for maybe 10 years or so. If that's you, then obviously starting a property portfolio with residential property is probably a smart choice, as these properties historically see the biggest levels of capital growth, and this sort of strategy can, or it would be called, a growth-focused strategy. On the other hand, though, if you're looking for short-term income-focused strategy, which is obviously cash flow and things, then student accommodation sometimes is maybe a good idea. But it does have obviously limited capital growth, but significant returns in the shorter term. Do you know what I mean? So you need to try and find that balance, I think. And before you begin building your property portfolio and purchase your first property, you need to make sure that you take time to think about what your investment goals are and your preferred investment strategy. Do you know what I mean? Do you want something?
That's why you have to ask yourself then, how quickly do you want to see a return on your buy-to-let investment? Do you have eyes on retirement, or are you just looking for some extra cash in your pocket to get by? How long do you want to keep your buy-to-let portfolio for? You know, is this a life thing? Is it a generational thing? You know, that would influence how you'd set it up in the first place. Now, believe me, I've made all these mistakes already. I've set it up all in our names in the very beginning and then realised later on, it's like, oh my God, I need to put in a limited company.
Yeah.
Because we're all in higher rate band now. So I need to put limited company. I did limited company. And then it was like, oh my God, the government's changed the way tax under Section 24. So we need to get some of these out our name now and to get them into our limited company. So I've still got a mix, but not as potent, I would say, because it was really, you know, taxing. Excuse the pun. In the beginning, because I was left exposed with the very fact that there were a lot of them were in our name. So I was able to put tranches over at 6 or more properties at a time with trying to mitigate capital gains. Now, you'll not be able to do that now because capital gains is getting halved from 12,000 to 6,000. So you'll not be able to do that. But you do have a husband and wife's, you know, a partner's offset, you know, love, favour and affection, marriage. Should say marriage now, shouldn't I? It's not a husband and wife's thing anymore. It's a marriage thing. So when you're married, you can actually give part of your portfolio or part of your property to your partner to offset with their capital gains allowance as well under love, favour and affection. So it goes for free. You don't pay ADS in doing that. I recently we had somebody say that my solicitor says I've got to pay ADS to transfer it to my wife or my husband, and it's like, no, you don't. It's free. It's love, favour and affection. That's the actual phrase. And then when he went back to his solicitor went, oh yeah, so it is. What does that say about your solicitor?
That's not good.
Like, holy shit! You better drop that person now. They're not the person you should have on board if that's where they are in their journey about their conveyancing. You should be looking for someone else. So I think that's the most important things you need to ask. But what you need to do is you need to build this dream. And that sounds really tacky, but if you don't have a dream, you'll either be pushed by your circumstances or you're pulled by your dream. If you don't do either, you will do nothing, and you'll be sitting talking about buy-to-let in 30 years' time. Well, I'm sitting on the beach still.
Yeah.
I'll still be around in 30 years' time. I'll be 86. I'll be 86. Yes, I will be around 30 years' time. I am planning on living to over 100 at least. So doing your research about the buy-to-let areas, Richard, what can we say about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a third step. And learning about how to build a portfolio is obviously to conduct market research of where you should be investing and where are the best areas. As I said, when we were doing the run through at the start, to have a good agent advising you of where that is and what the right properties are is really important and a really important part of that. Not all UK or even Scottish property investment areas are built equally for investment, with huge regional variations in price and growth potential, rental demand, and a lot of more other factors as well. This is one of the most essential tips, I think, on how to build your property portfolio successfully. And when you're researching an area, you need to consider there's several factors you need to think about, and it's affordability, obviously, what the monthly rent's going to be, what are your rental yields and your rental returns going to be. Now, we spoke about yields before, Jim, and it's obviously not necessarily a gross yield, maybe like obviously after the mortgage, your net yield, if you're using a mortgage to finance that. Your house price growth potential, what potential capital appreciation will you have over a period of time, and whether it's a young population with a high rental demand, or it's more maybe maturer tenants, or what the kind of demographic in terms of tenant demand are demanding property in certain areas. So there's a lot to take into consideration. I mean, if you're in maybe city areas, sometimes meet a lot of these criteria, and it's likely one of the best places you could probably start a portfolio. And obviously, more rurals are obviously a wee bit slightly different. the current best places to start looking for buy-to-let portfolio in the UK. Obviously,
I'll go back to saying right on your doorstep more than likely.
I was just going to say it.
I tell you what, Richard, I keep remembering this story look up the story about Acres of Diamonds.
Yeah.
There's a book, I think, Acres of Diamonds. I've never read it, but I've always been told by my mentors in the very beginning, when I was involved in other business enterprises, my mentors always used to tell me, Acres of Diamonds, Jim, Acres of Diamonds, what the hell are you going to the other end of the country for if it's right on your doorstep in front of you?
Yeah.
And you can just dig it up. And it's like, what are you talking about? And he went, well, look at what you've got round about you right now. Look at the opportunities that are available right now. You don't need to run to the other end of the country to go and get the same opportunity, because then it's the time involved. It's your time that's the most important. If you can make, for example, £250 an hour with your time, so if you can make £250 an hour and you're having to travel an hour there and an hour back to get to your latest project, you've just lost 500 quid.
Yeah.
So why would you want to do that if your time's limited? When your time's limited, then you want to maximize it and make it as efficient as possible. This is all about efficiencies. So you need to maximize it. And that means, for me personally, Richard, we've done successive shows on this, and we won't show it now, but we will do it in the future as well. You can walk back, you look back on the backlog on our Fife Properties YouTube channel for this. But we actually show you graphs about the price that you should be looking for. I talked about it last week as well. When we did a buy-to-let show, it was a private session. I demonstrated to the person what price they should be looking, because they went, it's obviously no affordable to buy any buy-to-lets anymore. And I went through the numbers with them personally. And then that's how you find out what price that you're meant to pay for a buy-to-let. And that is your benchmark. That's the price there, based on the other criteria. And I was quite surprised that they actually didn't realize they could do that. And they didn't understand how to do that. So I think that's the most important thing, is understanding how to know what your purchase price should be, so everything else follows. And this is why I keep saying, I know the answer before I start the journey.
Yeah, that's really important. To try and work, if you can get to that point.
That's like buying a lottery ticket and you know damn fine you're going to win.
Yeah.
Hello? That's what I do every time. It's literally, every time I buy a property, it's like buying a lottery ticket, and I know the numbers before I bought it. Yeah. The day I bought it is the day I've actually won the lottery. Every single property I've bought, every single time, because I know the answer before I start the journey. And it's easy to do that if you understand the financial modelling that's involved in doing that. And I'm not talking about the financial modelling as the UK does, because that's just made up as you go along.
No, and I think... No, because you do obviously all that previous, and obviously area selection and things is a big part of that. Just to recap on this, obviously, I mean, there's stats and things here about obviously, and the guide towards maybe like city areas, and they say in England, obviously like Manchester and Liverpool, and obviously up here it'd probably be like Edinburgh and Glasgow. But in all honesty, Fife, in terms of its location, with commuting distance to these areas, is a really good area for investment.
173,000 average price point.
Yeah.
Why would you go to England at 315, which is almost double the price then?
Yeah.
What would be the point? Oh, you'll get double the rent. No, you don't really. You actually get a proportion. You don't get you get a lesser proportion of rent than that. Plus the fact you're putting more capital more than likely into that. Yes, you can grow bigger, because if the market grows by 10%, you've made 30,000 on 315, but you've only made 17,170. But I'm not advocating that. I'm advocating buy and spread your risk. So this is all about things to consider, like affordability, monthly rental you'll get, the yields and returns you're wanting, the house price growth potential, and the population. In other words, the client base you're actually looking to appeal to. Now, personally for me, I couldn't care less who's paying the bills, whether it's the government on behalf of someone under universal credit, or whether it's actually somebody working, or a student. I couldn't care less who pays the bills. As long as they look after the property, they're not antisocial, and they pay their rent on time. Job done. And I'll look after you and give you 100%. Give you the best accommodation. Look after you. Pay the bills when they're needing to get paid. Do the refurbishments when they're needing to get done. That's how we're in the customer service business. It just so happens we use property to do that. So that's the things you've got to think about. So what about your thoughts on start small and expand portfolio
Yeah,
cautiously.
I think starting small and expand, and with an error of caution as well. I mean, have you ever heard of the phrase, like, obviously you should walk before you run and things? Obviously, yeah,
Every time, and I'd say that I've said that before, haven't I?
yeah.
Walk before you run.
Yeah, but while this mantra can help you with many aspects in life, and it's also true when you're building a buy-to-let portfolio. And while it can be there are so many investment opportunities on the market, it's better to start slowly when building a buy-to-let portfolio. And like you say, do your due diligence, think about things. If you're looking for tips on the best way to build your buy-to-let portfolio from nothing and starting small with one or maybe two solid investments is a good way to start it. And then obviously build up from there. We've said that before. We've seen people jump in with both feet with big renovation projects and get overwhelmed. So really
I've got
look
a
at
renovation project. Let's knock down walls and let's do all that. I've got a wee 2-bedroom flat which is ready to go and make money from day one. It's like
that's
I've got
the
no
good
desire
stuff.
to knock down walls and renovate property. I've got a
Yeah.
2-bedroom flat, and I've got another one, by the way, because the cost that you're paying for doing all that work and putting all the time in to do that, and that time I've probably bought about 3 or 4 at the same time.
You've set one or two up, and you're on to looking at your next one.
And I've spread my risk as well at the same time. So I think that's probably key. It is walk before you can run. Now, walk, I almost mean crawl as well. It takes a time to do this. It's not an overnight thing. It takes your time to get started. It will take your time to think, to have all the thoughts and to understand the mental challenges that you go through. Because that's a real big thing. It's a real big strain in your mind because you're thinking, is this going to work? Is this going to work? Now, on paper, it works. And it's pretty obvious. And then, but the back of your mind, you've got that wee voice that says to you, what makes you think that you're so special? What makes you think that's not for the likes of you? That's because all the social conditioning you've been given when you were growing up. Your mum, your mother, and your father, and your aunts and your uncles can all saying this to you. People round about in your so-called peer groups, basically giving you all this great advice from them. And it's like they've not even got the success that you're after. So don't take their advice. By the way, someone else's opinion of you doesn't need to be your future.
Yeah, that's a really good one. But yeah, you're right, Jim. By starting with a single property, and you can start earning returns, familiarise yourself with how the world of obviously property investing works. Do you know what I mean? And get yourself in that mindset and able to move forward. Then after a while,
get the one property. Just get the one property, Richard.
Yeah.
Get the one property. Prove it to yourself that it does work.
Take over.
You've not got really that much risk. You can exit anytime you want because you could probably sell it again. If you decide it's like, oh, this isn't like what I thought it was going to be like. But I tell you what, once you get the one property and prove it to yourself, which is what I did, then you start to go buy. And that was my thing. Very, very slow in the beginning. Just getting that commitment, just understanding the model, making sure in my own mind that it works and all the rest of it. And then it was like, holy shit, this works. And it was like, as much as I can get now, that sort of scenario. So it is definitely, I would say, walk before you can run and even crawl. So don't rush, don't look to expand your portfolio quickly and buy multiple properties. Hey, if you're a seasoned veteran and you've got somebody on your side, by the way, like a good letting agent that can actually do all this for you, and you're not doing it yourself, then yes, you could probably do that if you've got a certain amount of money to do it. This way, if something goes wrong, you're at less risk and investing. If you're investing multiple properties at once, so your finances are safer. If you're ever in doubt, as I said, be sure just to speak to a professional letting agent to understand that. And you can speak to yourself, Richard. The reality. What about as well then? One of the key factor in all this is think about your tenants, isn't it?
Yeah. One of the most important things is think about, like I say, who's your target audience? What's your tenant going to be like? And finding the right tenant in the first place. One of the most important things that property investors often forget to focus on when they're buying the property is what their target tenant is. It's easy to get wrapped up in maybe like the property marketing side, the running of things, your buy-to-let property. And you could forget about the people that are actually going to be living in the properties that are in your portfolio, and that's ultimately your tenants. So keeping your tenants happy is the essential part of obviously the whole running and success of your buy-to-let portfolio. And this means that you're less likely to experience void periods, and you can keep a steady cash flow of rental income if you've got happy tenants that are there paying the rent, looking after the property. So yeah, choosing the right tenants is important, and it helps you build a successful rental property portfolio, and ultimately a property empire if that's what your goal and your ambition is to do. You need to know what drives your tenants so that you can provide multiple properties that generate cash flow and interest. So what are you going to say, Jim?
Do you know how I looked at it? I looked at the principle that, and I did it like this. This is how I think.
Yeah.
It's your house.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving it to the tenant to use. It's their house. They could really do what they like with it in reason, as long as there's no damage in the property. Because at the end of the day, they want to make it a home. Yeah. So why should I be dictating to them what colours the wall should be and what other things? All I'm there to do is provide them with a house and make sure it's wind and watertight and make sure it complies with all the legislation, and then they make it a home. Mm-hmm. And that's who I thought in the beginning. And I just let them get on with it. I did. One of the failings, though, was I trusted them just to come and get back in touch with me if anything was wrong. And that didn't work out how it should have worked out, because in an ideal situation, my beliefs were, well, you just phone up the landlord and you'll get it sorted. But in their worlds, and some of them, was like, I didn't really want to bother them while the water pouring in at the corner or something like that. And it's
I'll wait till I see them and give them a list.
I'll wait till I see them, and that's about when something happens, or I have to pop round for something in the neighbourhood, and wait till you see it ends up being about 8 months later, and by that time it's like progressively worse. But they don't notice it because they live with it, and they just see it. They don't see the huge difference. Whereas I walk in the door and go, wait a minute, I was never there in the beginning. What on earth happened here? Well, we just thought we'd wait for you to come round. It's like, Christ almighty, did you not think about phoning me? So that's why it's important to have a proper inspection procedure to make sure that's protected and that's covered, because we do not all think the same. We do not all have that service level in our mind saying, I paid for this, so I need it fixed, especially people on universal credit. I don't know what it is, but they think they're lowest of the low in the pecking chain when it comes to that, because the government pays their rent. And it's like, no, you're not. You pay the same money like everybody else. You should be getting the service like everybody else. Why should that be any different for you? But for some reason, they think less of themselves with it. And for some reason as well, people that own their houses, some people actually think less of them as well, which is beyond me. Mm-hmm. But that's another story.
Yeah.
More people working from home is actually quite another one as well. More people working from home, the hybrid scheme.
Yeah, I mean, obviously on the back of obviously like COVID and lockdowns and things, tenant demand changed obviously drastically, and they now look for different facilities and things when people working from home, and they've got that more hybrid schedule. People now want faster broadband, they want more outdoor space, they sometimes want obviously room to have maybe a home office, and they're all important factors to them when choosing a rental property. Now, new builds not are highly popular with maybe younger tenants. So I mean, they're aiming to add new build properties. If you're aiming to add new build properties to your portfolio, it is a good way to have high demand. But I mean, not always the best investment, a new build property, depending on price point and things. So make sure that is the right decision.
It is about really about what sort of thing. I mean, new builds cost a lot more money. They are more efficient. And maybe in cities, they're actually, that lifestyle living is perfect for the type of tenant you're looking for. But in mainstream villages and towns, you're really just looking for the ex-local authority properties and flats, because to tell you what, they've always had big back gardens. They're always nice and big in the rooms. Yeah. They're actually very flexible in what they can do. So that's kind of where my thinking is on it. Somebody actually says to me on the other now, nowadays, would you say it's better to rent or to buy? I actually say it depends on your own circumstances, but I would actually say to people, possibly rent.
Do you know, a lot of their circumstances and their mindset and things have driven them to rent through choice now, and I see it so much more. You pay your rent and everything's dealt with. You don't have any overheads in terms of, do you know what I mean? You don't have to worry about repairs and maintenance, and do you know what I mean? As long as you're looking after the place.
Especially when you're short term.
Yeah, and if you move around a lot, if you're working,
you've got entry and exit costs of buying a house and a mortgage, a noose around your neck, basically. You remember, a mortgage is not for your benefit; it's for the banks. Mm-hmm. Mortgages were invented by the bank, and house sales were invented by the banks. encouraging you to buy your own house in order to sell mortgages to you. That's the whole point. Nobody in the world actually wants you to own a house. They just want you to get a mortgage. That's the business. That's the business world. That's how it works.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and in terms of obviously tenants and things, try and target properties that have these high important characteristics, like obviously good broadband and things, especially if you're maybe buying apartments, not to target younger professionals, and do you know what I mean? Make sure you've got good broadband speeds and things like that that will attract them.
What about diversifying then?
Yeah.
What would you say in diversifying?
Yeah, remember obviously diversify when you're looking to purchase obviously new additions to your portfolio, or if you're starting out. The best investment strategies look at creating property portfolios that include several different investment strategies. Now, by investing in just one type of property, you're limiting your invested portfolio potential and making yourself more susceptible to failures or potential failures. Property portfolio diversification means spreading the risk across several different ventures, which is vital when you're building a property portfolio. And investment properties in different areas and things is quite a good idea, or even different types, and they will allow you to keep your cash flow flowing, basically. So, for instance, say your property portfolio was filled with maybe multiple student accommodation properties, and they were all in the city centre. If the market trends slow in that area, your entire portfolio is going to fold. Do you know what I mean? Because you're dependent on that one scenario of students in the city area. So diversifying is maybe where you would look at maybe several different ways, or even just two ways. Choose a different type of property, for example.
This is why I'm extremely nervous about people completely invest in Aberdeen. It's like, you know, Aberdeen is the declining market, and I'm thinking, God, what do they see? I don't see. But it's acres of diamonds right in front of me, so why would I run away to Aberdeen to do it? But I do see that. There is one guy that actually, you know, he's probably doing it right, but I'm nervous about the very fact that you're going to have to wait for that market to lift, and it is going to rely a lot on the renewables, because oil isn't coming back, I don't think. I think there's this, I don't know what's going on here in Scotland, but there's this adamant, it's like we're going to cut off our nose to spite our face to get net zero, you know, in terms of our carbon footprint. It's like, my God, our net zero carbon footprint will only influence, in Scotland, will only influence the world by 0.5% of that. It's China and it's India and it's all
the big players.
We need to get on board with this. We're not going to make a bit of difference in this. It's like, oh yeah, but we're doing that.
And funnily enough, they're the ones that are on the playing ball. Yeah.
And this net zero thing is an absolute carry on right now. So this is why we talk about this portfolio. Now, portfolio in the beginning, I would never buy, in the beginning, I would never buy one-bedroom flats. Because I looked on the principle when I was buying one-bedroom flats. I would buy it if you were able to go up into the attic and extend.
And you've got that scope to extend.
Because at least there was some sort of, you know, extra if I need it. But I never saw a huge market for reselling one-bedroom flats, because there was a lot in the market at that time when I first started out. Nobody was buying them because two-bedroom were very affordable at the time as well. So the only way I would ever buy one-bedroom is if there is a market for it on it. So see how I always thought about maybe the exit, even though I've no intention of exiting it. Because if it did go pear-shaped, at least I'm protected, at least I'm hedged against that. Or I could go up and convert it to a two-bedroom or a three-bedroom even. In terms of what I was doing it. Now, I'm okay with one-bedroom flats now because there's a market for it. I've got a bigger portfolio, so it doesn't take a huge amount of my portfolio. So therefore, this is me diversified. So it's okay. It's less risk now. Whereas in the beginning, it was a big risk to do that and put all my eggs. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Before.
I think just as an example, Jim, I think obviously your portfolio is quite good in terms of its diversification. I mean, you've got a mixture of flats, apartments, and apartment blocks. You've got houses. You've got, do you know what I mean? You've got, and they're spread across all different areas throughout Fife. So, do you know what I mean? And I mean, obviously, you're at a stage where it's bigger than what it was previously. But even in the early stages, you still had a diverse selection of property where you knew if one failed, you still got the other ones holding the.
Now, this is why for me as well about areas, diversifying in different areas. Now you can talk about, you know, where people go to Manchester, Birmingham, Aberdeen, Dundee, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But if you have got acres of diamonds, to me, Fife, for me personally, is like a microcosm of the whole of the UK, where you've got St Andrews, which is the London of Fife, and you've got other ends of Fife, which is obviously the back end of beyond, and they're in between. And it's 50-50. Like the top end of Fife is more rural, which is farming. The bottom end of Fife is more industrialised, which is urban. So that's how I see it. So that's what I like about Fife. And the very fact is I've got diversification and leaving Kirkcaldy, Glenrothes, Cooper, East Neuk. So that's the sort of diversification I've got. So I don't worry as much because each area has their own benefits and their own industries. So it won't all go down at once unless the UK all goes down at once.
And then we're all going together.
Yeah. And that's a different strategy. You know, the whole of the UK goes down, you just need to make sure you're running faster than the other person because they'll get caught with their portfolio first because they're over leveraged and over geared. So the bank basically goes, oh, they're next on the pile. And that's it. You're literally next in the... it's nothing personal. You're just next in the pile. You have to protect yourself. The bank isn't your friend. You have to make sure you do your due diligence, even with the banks, to make sure you're going to be protected, and make sure you're just running faster than everybody else if you know what that means. Hands-off investments, you know, what should we do? Choose hands-off investments. Yeah, hands-off investments can be. Many people assume that when building a property portfolio that you'll have to take on a lot more responsibility than as a landlord. But you do have the typical landlord's jobs. It can be hectic. Pressures with finding tenants, managing your property, any issues with the tenants that are struggling, you know, you have to deal with as well. I often used to say, it's like, I tell you what, it's like being a social worker. It genuinely is. And you laugh at that because you get that every day.
Yeah, I know, I get that.
I'm lucky enough that I don't get that anymore because all my property is managed from my portfolio. And all I'm needing to do is what do I buy next and do the numbers work? Yes, it does. Let's go for it. So it's like the old thing about Richard Branson always says, screw it, let's do it. It popped into my mind last night about something else. I went, screw it, let's do it. And I thought, Christ almighty, I'm becoming a wee mini Richard Branson. That's not a bad thing, I suppose. No. This is especially true for people already working full time and looking to use their property portfolio to actually generate their income and replace their income to a degree, or give them more personal time to themselves. A classic is, see when tax credits came in. Now, you'll maybe not know what tax credits was at the time, working tax credits, but it was brought in by the Labour Party. And I instantly saw people like, you know, it could go right down to part-time, and the tax credits would actually make up the difference for them for the full-time salary that they were on. So they were actually choosing, and this was in local authority and public service and civil servants. They were actually just going to part-time, and the tax credit system was upping their salary to the normal salary they would normally get. So they're working half the hours, if not less, and they're still getting the same amount of money under the tax credit system. And then that got me to thinking, it's kind of like what we've got here, where your buy-to-let investments should actually be your tax credit system, where it actually supplements your income and it allows you to have your time back. It allows you to spend the time on doing what you need to do elsewhere. So you can concentrate on your portfolio. Hence the reason when I got to the point of the tipping point where it was like, now you have to decide, are you going to have a career as a PLC, you know, a PLC leader in industry and stick with the portfolio size you've got now, or are you going to continue to build your portfolio as it stands and actually leave your PLC dreams behind? It was definitely the former, the latter, and leave my PLC dreams behind, because it's like I couldn't work for someone else for the rest of my life, and it wasn't because I didn't enjoy it. It's because I had no time. I loved what I did, and then
it gets to that point where you can't do both.
I just couldn't. I had to. It came to the tipping point where I had to choose, and I knew the wealth was going to be generated from the buy-to-let business and property as well, and what I was doing. It was far exceeding my normal. Literally 1.5 days a week I was working in my buy-to-let, and I was earning more money in that on a part-time basis than I was earning in my
160 odd hours.
Financial controller. It made absolute sense. Why would I need to continue that if my life's there? It set me free. That's what you have to think. What is this you wanted to do? A landlord's job can be very hectic, hands-on. A property investor, on the other hand, is you get a letting agent to do it, and you keep an eye on the KPIs, the key performance indicators, and work from there. That's where your forte lies. If you are a surgeon, what happens when you cut your hand in an accident in the garden? You'll no longer be a surgeon. If you've not got insurance, you're screwed.
Yeah.
If you're a pilot, it depends on your health check every single month to retain your pilot's license and fly people around the world. What happens when you don't pass your health 1 month? You're screwed. If you've not got some kind of insurance or any backup for that, your income is wiped out straight away. Like the guy, it was a joiner, professional joiner, and one day he got the bandsaw out and it went, and his thumb fell off. I've witnessed that happen, by the way. It's like, oh my God. It's literally this guy, his career as a joiner was over because he literally cut his hand in half with the bandsaw. And yet there was a protection on it. But that's the type of thing I'm talking about. That's why you've got to think about, do you really want to get involved in this and do it yourself? You might want to try and save money, which is literally the price of a cup of coffee every single day, which is crazy because literally you can make more than that every single day with your own time. Or do you want to enlist a property management company to do it for you? It will be an added expense, but I think it's an added investment.
Yes,
especially with things limited. It's an investment. I always talk about things. When people go, how much is it going to cost me to sell my house? And I go, well, how much do you need to invest to sell your house? Because as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to get you a hell of a lot more money than any other agent will get you. So you're literally getting me for nothing in cash back in the exercise. That's who I look at. It's an investment in me and my services to get you that result. It's no cost ever when you use me. So they're all hands off. I mean, that then allows you to do what you want. It can eat into your profits, but I don't think so, because a really good letting agent will make sure your occupancy rate's high. It will make sure your rent is at the right level.
Yeah.
And it will make sure your rent is collected on time, which is a huge offset to compare against the minimum management fee you'll pay. Look at the statistic we talk about. You're 231% more likely to have rent arrears managing a property yourself than using a letting agent. Does that not pay for it straight away? Imagine if you lose 1 month's rent. That's £400 and £500, for example. You've lost £500 and you're paying your letting agent, what, 75, 80 quid?
Yeah.
That'll literally take you about 6 months to get that back.
Yeah.
And you're doing it yourself. And how are you going to get that back? What do you know what to do? There's 170 pieces of legislation to contend with. If you lose a month's rent, you have no idea what to do and how to do it. You then have to go to a professional who then costs you money. And then it costs you more time.
I think what you're paying that small fee for is the skill and the knowledge that the agent has. And like you say, Jim, you can't put a price on your own time. And if you can save as much of your own time as you can, then I mean that pays for itself.
Let's talk about the 8th point. Do you have a long-term plan and exit strategy?
The long-term plan and exit strategy, like you say, Jim, you were always thinking, like, whether you were needing it or not, always think of the exit strategy. And one of the most important aspects of building a property portfolio and the UK property investment in general is to have an exit strategy. An exit strategy looks at the end result of each individual investment, considering what to do when it comes to potentially selling the property if you have to. Do you know what I mean? Like you're saying about the one beds, Jim, is there a market for one beds? Will I be able to sell it if I can? Your goals will tie into what your exit strategy is. And if you're investing a way to build an attractive retirement fund, then you want to generate as much rental income as you can before selling the property when the right time comes around. As well as this, selling your property takes time due to the property being a physical asset. If you want to sell your investment, you need to be patient and secure the most value for your property when that time comes around. So yeah, I mean, property is a long-term investment, and you cannot quickly just dump your investment if you are in financial trouble. And I see people trying to do that, like, oh, it's all going wrong, let's just get rid. So you should have a plan prepared ahead of time in case you maybe come up to that. Jim, you'll have seen a lot of that over the years. People hit financial difficulty and just
yeah. I just want rid of them because we've now come up to a hurdle, and I go, yeah, beauty. I'll buy them.
I'm buying.
I'm buying if you're selling. Yeah. And it's like, you know, they should work it by then. It's like, holy shit, Jim's wanting them. He must see something I don't see.
Yeah.
And because I've been through this before, when you get to the real tough times, you know, tough times don't last, but tough people do. And it's that mental resilience to keep going through that and understand. This is why it's important to have the dream, because then you're not pushed by your circumstances anymore, because the tough time comes along and you go, oh, I just want to exit. I don't want the hassle. Whereas your dream then kicks in and goes, no, this is what you want later on. This is where you are right now. This is where you can be. And that's where your dream pulls you now. The circumstances don't push you.
Mm-hmm.
Pushed by your circumstances, pulled by your dream.
Pulled by your dream, yeah.
One or the other, or you'll do neither. You'll do nothing. You'll sit where you are and you'll live for the weekend every single week for the rest of your life. And then you'll lie on your deathbed and you'll go, I wish I did.
Yeah.
That is a hell of a position to be in, eh? I was talking to Ian this morning. It's like there's certain things I was talking to him about when I was on my walk, and I was thinking to myself, Ian, I never want to get. We were talking about something particular, and I says, I think I'd get to my deathbed and think I wish I'd done that. And that's the reason why I'll do it.
Yeah.
For that very reason. Because I do not want to get to that position where I think I wish I had done. Now, people say, well, I'm dying anyway, so I'll not really bother. And you can't take it with you. That's usually the people that are broke. And they'll never make anything of themselves because they want everybody to be just like them. That's it. Keep away from these people. That's 95% of the population, by the way. Keep away from these people. Don't let them into your head. Don't let them into your thoughts. Keep plugging yourself into the system. Keep plugging yourself into the good thoughts, the mental process, the build, the wealth.
Yeah, and I'd like to say, you're building something and building that wealth, and this kind of premise, you can't take it with you. No, leave it and pass it down, pass it on.
Oh, you know what I mean? Give your kids a hand, for goodness sake. It's like, help them out. Your kids haven't to go through the struggles that you had to go to. They've got their own struggles. Don't burden this with them, especially if you've got the answers to them and you can solve everything for them. Let them learn struggles that you've not learned yet because you had to learn all the shit you learned before.
Yeah.
That's the point. Let them stand on your shoulders. You know the phrase, standing on the shoulders of giants.
Mm-hmm.
That's effectively how these people become. Why do you think all these successful people get to the stage and went, I want to thank.
Because it's them that helped them get there.
These are all the people's shoulders that they stood on to get where they were. I want to thank Pat and Greta Gregory, Jerry and Mandy Scriven, David Denise Butler, Bernie and Janet D'Souza, Alton and Linda Craig, Stuart and May Clark. These are all the people. Tom McFadden, Tom and Jerry.
Yeah,
we love that. Tom with Jerry. They were a couple. Tom McFadden and Jerry were absolutely. Tom's no longer with us now, by the way, unfortunately. But I tell you what, if it wasn't for these people, I would not be where I am now. Because these are the people that put up with my shit in the beginning, and in order to get my mindset changed, in order to change the way I thought, to lift the lid off the jar, so I could finally jump out and actually have my financial freedom and work towards it. That's the people that you stand on the shoulders of giants. The people that have come before you. Yeah. That's why you read the books and listen to the people that are far more successful than you, and you'll learn things off of them. You don't need to sign up to their courses, by the way. That's a feeder system. I had somebody the other day say to me, I'm messaging you on behalf of so-and-so, and he would like to come on your show, your wealth creation show, and tell people all about his strategies and all the rest of it. And I went, yeah, that's all very well, but I need to know who this person is and what his background is, and how has he built his wealth? And the next phrase I said was, has he built his wealth in selling courses? Or has he got a track record prior to this in building wealth? That's what I want to know before he comes on any show I've got. Because there's no way I'm endorsing somebody that builds their wealth in selling courses. Because that's an academic as far as I'm concerned. They've not been in the real world. They don't understand. They're just teaching people, and that's it. And, you know, you can say what you want, but that's the way I feel about it. Unless, and then that person came on, because it was on his feed anyway, and said, you know, yeah, absolutely agree with you. Do your due diligence, Jim. I've had 2 books and I'm an economist and all the rest of it, and da-da-da-da. And it's like, you know, as Shania Twain says, it don't impress me much. It's like, and your point is, how did you build your wealth? Because they never said. They still never said. It's like, how did you build your wealth? So, you know, I'll keep them out there now. If they eventually go, no, it's a dead duck and I'm no coming on your show and all the rest of it, it's like, so what? It doesn't make any difference to my wealth. I'll still motor on, but it certainly makes a difference to actually influencing people here. And the last thing I want to do is introduce someone into this that actually has no idea what they're talking about and just wants to sell courses. So, that's
yeah, exit strategy, just to recap, obviously, I mean, always have your exit strategy planned out when you're initially buying an investment. Not if you're going to, like, you're not maybe going to need to sell the property, but always have that strategy and research the rental market trends and consider property price predictions and speak to a professional letting agent or a estate agent in the area so that you've got that figure and that exit strategy in your head in case you do need to use it.
See, what I think is quite an important one as well. We've said point 9 about considering buying off-plan property. Yes, you could consider it, but there is a lot of deals out there, and I will say deals, and I mean deals in a derogatory sense. I don't like the word deal because it implies Del Boy as far as I'm concerned. Right. It's just my thought process. I've seen so many people talk about deals, and it's like, there's something wrong with that. Because they use the same lingo, don't they? It's like the typical double glazing salesman. It's the same lingo all the time. And you know straight away. It's like the telemarketer. It's like, how are you today, sir? And I'm straight in with, what you want? It's like, what do you want? Just dispense with the formalities. Get on with it. What are you trying to flog me? I know they've got a job to do, and it's absolutely fantastic. But they're the ones that phone me and want my time. And the most valuable commodity in the world is not money. It's your time. Because when you're lying on your deathbed, your money's not going to save you. It's the time that you got extra. So look after your body. Your health is really important. That's what's going to get you. All this is here to carry this about in your brain. So you need to look after all this in order to carry this about. You can't replace this. You can't do anything with it. Once this is gone, everything else shuts down. Yeah, you can replace a hand, you can lose an arm, or rest of it, you can lose a leg, you can replace all that. You could possibly replace lungs and stuff like that now, but you can't replace your brain.
Your mind.
Once your brain's gone, you're done. You're goosed. Your goose is cooked, as so to say. So off-plan property could be one, but you have to watch out for these ones. You have to do your numbers. That's what it's down to. Numbers. You'll get loads and loads of people coming across you saying, buy this student let, buy social housing, invest in social housing. We've got this and we've got that. It's like, we don't even know these people. And to me, it's like the old Wolf of Wall Street. It's like the boiler houses trying to flog you something. It's like, it's mutton dressed up as lamb, if that makes sense. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. You have to watch. You have to be careful of these so-called deals that are out there. So be very, very vigilant. I like old school ex-local authority. You know what you're getting. You know the build quality. It's been there for years. You know how to work it. You know how to do it up. You know how to improve it. You've got big back gardens. That's a premium nowadays. Land is something you never get back, by the way. Once somebody's built on it, you can't get it. You can't duplicate it. Once you've used it, it's gone. So land is land is worth a lot, especially if you've got a lot of land with property. I mean, it does take maintenance and stuff like that, so you've got to think about that as well. But having a good garden front and back for a family, for anybody, is really good. So you've got to play to your markets. As you go into the cities, then that's when you've got to consider the off plans. The high-rise skyscrapers and stuff like that. The big blocks. But then again, look at the ones that have been caught out with the cladding and the way they've been built. And I've got a wee bit of nervousness about the build quality. You see some of them, and they're all just steel girders, and units just slotted in. And it makes me extremely nervous and think to myself, that's not going to last longer than a local authority property.
No.
There's no way that's going to last longer than some of these brick-built properties by the local authorities. There's just no way that's going to happen. They're going to be, they've got, I think they've got a finite life, but that's the new build quality. So, once you've got it, and hold on to it, I would say. There's an incentive to invest in off-plan properties. They usually offer significant discounts, but you've got to then be aware they've got huge margins built into that. That's why they offer the discounts. I remember Barrett years ago, and they basically came to me and wanted to buy 4 properties, and they were giving me about 17% off the list price to buy the 4 of the properties. I still never bought them because the numbers didn't make sense. They were wanting me to buy it something like 160,000, but they were giving me a discount of that, bringing them down to 140. But my rent return was minimal. And I could have gone, I could instantly buy them and I could resell them and get that money. But if they had to come to me, then they're no selling, are they?
So then I was just going to say, you're going to struggle to resell them anyway.
No,
They're obviously coming to you.
Them and resell them. I mean, I've just proved that because look at Mill Street, Teal Mill.
Yeah,
it was that development. I mean, they're literally back at the price they were when I first bought them. If not, well, a wee bit more. They're a wee bit more. And I've had a lot of rent out of them, which is great. And then new build as well. When you get the new build off plans, you're also getting factor fees, which eat into your profit. Because the tenant's not going to pay that if they don't need to pay factor fees somewhere else. So you're having to pay that out your thing. So never mind your management fee. You've got a factor fee next, then you've got a rent collection fee, and then you've got all the other costs. So new build's a bit precarious for me.
And we're all too aware of factor fees slowly creeping up over time. Do you know what I mean? They can become expensive. And
I've had massive fights with my factor.
I know.
It's like, and threatening court action with them. And yet the other people in the whole thing have no idea what's going on. And they're just happy to accept fees. It's like, oh, well, it is what it is. We can't do anything about it. It's like, flipping heck, just tell them to get lost. But it's not my fight. It's minimal to me. I disagree with them on certain costs that they're actually charging, and I challenge them on it. And that's probably what keeps them vigilant and keeps the price down. But for me, trying to save a few £100 a year in my factor fees when I've got all that, it's like, why would I spend time doing this all the time? So that's why you could learn about off-plan property and all the rest of it, but you
really need to do your homework if you're going to be doing it and make sure it works. Yeah.
Belts and braces. I know my. There's a great phrase by Keith Cunningham, Rich Dad: "Stick to your knitting."
Yeah.
And also, whoever's talking to you about investment strategies, do they eat their own cooking? So do they do actually what they do themselves? They can tell you everything to do, but are they actually doing it? All these furus out there, the fake gurus, the furus. It's like, are they actually doing it? There's very few people actually doing it. They're just trying to sell courses. And then they're teaching everybody else to say, hey, come on my course and I'll teach you how to make money. And their money is like, well, you just get a wee bit ahead of the other person, then sell them a course or introduce them to me. And then you'll get money from me as an affiliate marketing. That's what they do. I know that because I know all these people and I know how they're trained. I've been on these courses. I know how they're done. This is the next one, the final one for us.
Yeah.
Buy-to-let mortgages. Mortgage or not?
Yeah, buy-to-let mortgages. I mean, do you avoid them if you can afford it, or do you use finance? And I mean, if you're looking at how to build a property investment portfolio, say you've got around maybe 20,000 or have a low budget, you're likely going to consider buy-to-let mortgages. And while it's a popular decision amongst landlords, one of our top tips would be to consider whether you can use financing or whether you should be doing that with if you've got the funds available to buy outright. Now, what do you think? I mean, Jim, we always kind of think, look, if you get the finance and use it to fund the purchase.
If I can make a 10% or more net return on my investment before the capital appreciation.
Yeah.
Okay. And now I'm saying 10 because I said 15 one time when somebody went, you'll never make 15. And I went, well, I do actually. I sometimes make infinite as well. And I make a hell of a lot more than that out of my investments. But that strategy, that's the way I've set it up.
Yeah.
So I actually play on the side of caution and I just say to people 10%. If you can make 10% or more on your investment and you can borrow it from the bank at 4% or 5% on a buy-to-let mortgage, you'd be making a 5% differential on every pound that you borrowed from the bank in terms of your return. So why would you not do that? Especially if you're getting a 5-year fixed rate deal and it's hedging you against any inflationary pressure or any base rate rises. Why would you gamble like that? If you've got dead certainty and you know, this is why I say I know the answer before I start the journey, because you can bring down. Now the other one as well is interest only capital repayment.
Yes,
I'm a big fan every single time interest only. As I said before, it's the interest is deductible against the rent. Now, if it's owned in your own name, it has to come into Section 24 rules, which actually says that Section 24 says you'll get a tax credit of 20% against the interest element, and it won't be deductible for calculating the tax. So that's Section 24. So in other words, you could pay a lot more in tax because you're taxed at a higher rate in the 40% band because of that. And then your interest, 20% of your interest is taken off the tax bill once it's calculated. So you can pay a lot more money. This is how I ended up in my, when it was told it was coming in Section 24 and we were warned about it in 2016-17, my example was put before the Treasury Select Committee by Roger Millen of the SNP, because he was on it. And he said, how is it then that Jim, after all these years, can actually have this portfolio structure, and in your new regime, he now goes from a profit to actually, if he earned nothing, he would still pay a tax bill of £6,000. Sorry? And it just fell in deaf ears, and they went, well, that's what it is. It'll affect 1 in 4 landlords, so we're not particularly bothered. But that was why thank God, I'd started the limited company and I'd put most of my portfolio after that into there. So we were only sitting with what we'd bought in the very beginning. So that for me is that you know, if you're buying with mortgages, you can get really good deals now actually on limited companies, better than probably in your own name. Mine we looked at the other week. Yeah, remember. I'm saying mind.
Remember, yeah, it was just last Thursday we went through the
It's like, remember, we looked at it the other week, just for people that don't understand, because I was watching Clarkson's farm thing, and Gerald's on there going, and he gets to the end of the conversation, you're thinking, I have not got a clue. So remember, you can face a tax bill at the end of this. But also remember that buy-to-let is just as cheap and cost-effective now on limited companies as it is in sole traders. I think because the lenders now realise that they're going to have to be more competitive to get that mortgage business. So they actually brought all the rates down to mimic that. Having a limited company then keeps it in a separate structure, independent of your income. So it's not taxed every year at your rate, your personal rate. It's taxed every year at the corporation tax rate, which is a lot less, more than likely, of your marginal rate you're probably paying now if you're a professional. You'll probably be paying a marginal rate of about 33% in terms of your tax, whereas corporation tax is 19 and 20% or whatever it is now. So that's why you want a limited company. And it also gives you flexibility. You can leave the money in there when it's taxed. Because if you take it out via dividends, if you want to take it out, it goes on as your income, and you can take it out whenever you want, when it matches your taxation requirements. In other words, if you've got a year which you're earning a bit less, you think, okay, I can take dividends out because I'll be paying the lower rate. So you'll pay dividends at 7.75% or whatever it is. I think it's 7.75 or 8.75. You'll only be taxed at that rate, and you'll have no national insurance on it as well. Yeah. So you actually are paying a lot less tax on that. Fair enough, you pay 20% as well in corporation tax, but it's still a marginal rate of about 28%. As opposed to being a higher rate payer, and you could be paying a marginal rate of 33 and 40%. Yeah. So that's why it's important to keep it in there. Plus the fact that now you're getting a £2,000 tax-free allowance for dividends. That'll disappear. It's going down to 1,000, then going down to 500. So they're taking that away as well. See how they're basically taking all these tax advantages back. So you're going to have to mitigate it a lot more and be more prudent in terms of what you're doing. So I'm a big fan of buy-to-let mortgages. I'm a big fan of the numbers are right and it works, fair enough. If your strategy is you're going to exit soon, then possibly the buy-to-let mortgage isn't what you want. Or if you're just wanting mainstream income, you're wanting it as a pension, You don't want to worry about mortgage rates. You want a steady income all the time. You don't want it to change really. Then possibly you buy them outright with cash. You could also buy outright with cash, by the way, refurb, 6 months later, release it on a mortgage, get all the cash back out. That's another strategy, though. So that's what we used to call the rinse and repeat formula. So you just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and it's just a formality how you do that.
Yeah.
So that's where I am with that.
Yes,
I think that's it, Richard. I don't think there's anything else we need to.
No, I think that's a good way to finish. Obviously, that's our 10 points.
Take some questions.
There's questions there I could see.
We have on TikTok, insurers, they will do what they can to pay less than nothing. Yeah, absolutely right. HMO thoughts. I've never been a big fan of HMO. All your eggs in one basket. You get one person that's maybe a problem, it does affect the rest of them. And especially with the legislation right now, you can't get them out of the HMO because they've got a lease as well under legislation. So it's difficult to get that out. So if you've got a bad tenant that causes a problem, then your whole HMO could be wiped out because it's all at the same place. That's just my thoughts. It does. If you get it right, you could make a fortune.
People do it right and do it successfully, but I mean, it could be a bit tricky.
Private or commercial property? Private every single day. Private residential rent. I'm mainstream landlord. I have commercial property, but it's for me, for my business, because it's a real good tax advantage having it in a different name, so you can pay your other company the rent that you actually get paid, and it allows you to move money about, and to different companies in order to make it more tax efficient. That's why I have commercial property. But I'm not a big fan of commercial property. If it's high street premises, they're all dying out. It's that's no great one. If it's warehouses, that's a thing that's really up and coming, because more and more people are putting their stuff into storage, kind of like the American sort of format. They're using storage centers. So it depends on the numbers if they're right. How many can you buy before you get? How many can you have before limited company? It makes no difference. I've got 5 mentioned in there, but it makes no difference really. It depends on your taxation strategy and your taxation structure as an individual, and how you mitigate that tax to make it the most efficient possible. The difference between a sole trader and a limited company is really all about planning for tax. That's it in a nutshell. It's nothing other than planning for tax. That's the only reason you'd hold it in one or the other. So you really need to speak to an accountant. I know I'm an accountant, but I don't know your full circumstances, so I wouldn't be able to advise you, Martin, for that reason. If you want to speak to us individually and plug yourself into the investment workshops, then by all means contact Richard. His details are richard.cook@fifeproperties.co.uk. Or you could just type 5 Properties Richard Cook and it'll come up somewhere. Yeah. More than likely. For all the good things, all the good reasons. Nowadays, would you say it's better to rent or buy? Yeah, we covered that one. I think rent all the time. I'm going to rent once I sell up. Once I sell up, once I retire, I'll rent. I'll just sell my main house, release all the capital. I'll probably pass it on to all my children and give them everything now, so I don't have a huge inheritance tax bill. I mean, that's the thing that worries me the most. It's like, if I die and I pay an inheritance tax bill, it'll not make any difference to me. I'll be dead, but I'll still be pissed off. Do 5 Properties do units? Yeah, industrials or garages. Yeah, we would do that.
Yeah, we do that. Yeah, we've got the yards. We've got
join Scotland's tenant union living rent. Join Scotland's tenant union living rent. Yeah, there's loads of tenant associations. There's very few landlord associations. I think the numbers are stacked against landlords, and I don't think people realise we need landlords. We need private landlords for the flexibility of our workforce, for our nation, and to solve the homelessness problem, because they're more reactive and they can act quicker than local authorities, which take ages. Yeah. Okay. Do you do crypto as well as property? Absolutely not. No. For some people, it's okay. I'd prescribe to the Warren Buffett principle, and it's gambling. It's Warren Buffett looks at it like that. You're not producing anything. You're only basing your value or what you're going to achieve is based on how much more someone else wants that crypto than you do. And that to me is gambling. That's just, whereas a house produces rent because somebody lives in it, it's tangible, you can touch it, you can feel it. And like businesses as well, they'll produce rent, they'll produce income, they produce, profits. There's something tangible about that, and that's what I like about it. I don't like, you could just look at the amount of crypto massive companies have actually gone under recently. And then also the you look at the kickboxer that lost everything, put 26 million of his income into it, and the crypto market crashed and they lost the whole lot. That's mental. Best way to grow a buy-to-let portfolio, we've just talked about that. Where are you based? We're based in Fife. And he did say Glenrothes, we're in Leven as well. We're in Cooper as well. But ideally, you don't actually need a premises or a place to operate a business.
No. But I think that's what the recent times have taught us that, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And just quickly,
I've got Colin here. Colin said, this is really resonating with me, Jim, especially today as it's my first day of being self-employed. A bit scary, but it'll drive me to work hard. He's also said that some lenders will have a limit of 10 units per legal entity.
Absolutely.
So thanks for that.
That's why I've got the problem. I've now deal with corporate banks because I have significantly more than 10 units. So the lenders won't touch me because, and I do have, I've got Mortgage Works, I've got Bingham Midshires, I've got the Bank of Scotland still, I've got, other ones from the very beginning that were passed on through the toxic debt scandal and when they sold them off to other people, because it was GMAT Residential I first started out with, then they went kaput after all the credit crunch, and my mortgage was sold on to other people, as well as the Dunfermline Building Site was sold theirs on as well. So these are all still buy-to-let mortgages I have, but I'm still entitled to keep them for the length of the period. But I won't be able to get a normal mainstream buy-to-let anymore because of the size of our portfolio, and my wife or myself name. But I kind of prefer it like that. The banks are very risk adverse. I like that policy. They fall in line with a 60% loan to value. They don't, and then they want you to bring it down over a period of maybe 5 years to 50% loan to value. So they do things like that. But 50% loan to value now for me is a nice tolerable level. It's very risk adverse then, if that's the case. When you build up a huge amount of wealth, you don't just want to see it disappear overnight because you just over leveraged yourself. And then all of a sudden, the government decided to change something, or the world economy had an influence on it, and then the bank went, "We want your money back," and then you have to sell the whole lot, pay a huge amount of capital gains because it's all built up over time. You've got all the deferred gains to pay, and then you've got all the price and all the exit costs of actually doing that on top of it, and then you're left with basically left with the shirt on your back.
And we've seen it happen to people.
Yeah. They do what we call
that's what happens.
Yeah, it's a fire sale. They call it a fire sale. Basically, it's like the fire sales, and when the shop went on fire, you basically got the sign that went up the next day and says they're all smoke damage, by the way, but if you want to buy them, we'll give them for 10 pence rather than £10, just to get rid of them, to clear it, because they didn't want to get rid of their own junk. So they just thought, we'll sell you it for 50p. Stuff like that. That's what a fire sale is effectively. So you've got to watch the banks don't do that to you, and that's why you have to hedge yourself and minimize your risk overall. But that's what we teach all the time about. Okay, that's us. Somebody said Leven is a rough place. I tell you what, Leven is. If you come to Leven, God's country. I don't think you truly understand what
people maybe think we're biased at that because obviously we're from Leven.
There's a train station going into Leven at the back of the swimming pool to take you on to Edinburgh in 2024. There's a beautiful beach. It's blue flag. The beaches all the way along, going away along to the East Nuke and along to all the other places and that. I think people get mixed up between different areas of Leven mouth, and they categorize it all as the same. Whereas, the percentage of earnings in one area of Leven mouth compared to the other area of Leven mouth is 50%. So it just shows you what the demographic is. There's tens of thousands of households in Leven mouth, and they've all got different areas. They've all got different things. It's a whole different genre. You just have to understand where you need to buy. That's why I sat in the housing partnership with Fife Council in the early 2000s to 2010 discussing strategic housing policy. So I know where all the areas are to buy. I know where all the areas are to invest in. And I know all the areas that are going to be up and coming and all the areas that are actual investment before it actually happens. It's just understanding it's knowing your shit. That's really what it comes down to. You know, eating your own cooking and sticking to your knitting. Yeah. That's it. Okay.
Yep. So, yeah, that's good. We'll finish off there, Jim. Letting show this Saturday. I'm doing. Jim, you're away tomorrow.
I'm away climbing a mountain.
Jim's away climbing.
If anybody fancies that, actually, I'll see if I could easy fund. I'll go and find the link and I'll put it in.
That's why I brought it up. So I thought you could put that in there. Jim's going to do this. A really good cause, obviously for charity. You're climbing. What's the mountain called?
Oh, it's Tootval. It's the Atlas Mountain.
Tootval, that's it.
So Tootval, JBIC Tootval, 4,167 meters, and it's on behalf of, and I've put it in the link there. Unfortunately, Instagram, TikTok, you don't get that. It's on behalf of the Crosnest Trust. Now, the Crosnest Trust is actually in 1980s. It was formed. It's given over 600. It's raised over £600,000. It's given away about 100, and it must have been 130 electronic, wheelchairs, electric wheelchairs, and about 50 manual ones as well over the years to help people in need. So I'm climbing on behalf of the Crosnest Trust and raising funds for them. So if anybody's got any spare cash, I'd love you to contribute. We're just trying to get as much together as possible. Hopefully we'll hit our target and job done. Done. That's it. That's all I'm doing it for, really.
Yeah, I'll be doing landlord's expenses on Saturday in the letting show, and it'll be myself leading things next Monday, 12:30 on here. Jim, you'll still be away.
Absolutely.
So,
okay.
I will see you all then.
That's it. Bye for now.
Thanks, Jim. Bye, everyone.
I'll do your TikTok and everything. Bye-bye and TikTok.